Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. We talk about pretty essential things here, all relative to consciousness, believe it or not, because consciousness is everything, as God is everything. We are going back to some fundamental things in this series. This is, I think, the second part of the series, or maybe it's the third, I don't remember. But we're having to skip some weeks because holidays are here and visitors have come. And so it's not like I'm, steadily doing this. Guys, we have to know and understand what God is. I say what God is. We're the who of God, if you've listened to previous shows. We have to understand what God is. God is energy. We're going back to those basic things and how you were formed. I know everyone is interested in getting beyond the ego child's mind, opening certainly these very exciting, deep and esoteric channels in all of us. However, one of the things that we all must remember is it rides on the basics. So don't think because we seem to be talking about the ego and the ego child's mind that we aren't getting to the subject, because it is the awareness of this that's part of the healing. You understand? I've noticed for years that if people can just face their stuff, if we can just call things by the name they are, and if they don't, if the person doesn't embrace their identity around the name of the illness they have, like generalized anxiety disorder, if they will not do that, if they just see what caused it and give themselves permission to embrace it and say, yes, that's part of me, but that's not all of me, we have a real good chance of going on and healing. And that's what these shows are about, as much as they can be, because this is a radio show and I'm talking to a lot of people. All right. Let's do a quick prayer, get us all on the same page. This prayer is always so I can get on the same page, and as you, and then we will launch off with some very important information for you in your life, okay? And we're so glad you're with us today. This is great. I was off last week because of guests. I'll be off, by the way, this coming next Sunday because of Thanksgiving. I'm taking the week off to try to do some writing and plotting out my next book. So I'll see you the following week, and we'll still continue the series, I believe. All right, here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. As we sit here today and open to not knowing, we often get in the way and need to know and rush to outcomes and drive ourselves to know because we're afraid. And we understand that the energy of the planet right now is the tolerance and absolute, perhaps, enjoyment of not knowing, and of this being one of the most creative times that we've ever had. What a wonderful time to reinvent ourselves by opening to who we really are as you. Now, we ask right now that we open our minds, that we see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We ask now that we surrender knowing anything for 90 minutes, that it is the you through us and through all things that know it all. And we ask to be taken to that energetic place that we may receive that information. Life is a series of steps. It isn't rushing to the goal line. It is knowing what the next thing to do is, and the next, and the next, in a very sacred manner, because this is our journey as spiritual people in physical form. we accept this now, dear God, as we open ourselves to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We say this prayer in your name, in the name of the ascended masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of every single person listening to this show today. Thank you. And so it is. You know, it flashed through my mind when I said every single person listening to the show today. We've gotten the most hilarious pictures sometime of people with their tablets or their computers on, and they're listening to me. So you see little silly me in the background, and their dogs look so serious, or their cats, you know, like they're listening, and that would be lovely. I love dogs and cats and just about anything. We had a big bear on our porch the other day, a huge, like 500-pound bear eating birdseed. So we are not doing that anymore. We haven't had any trouble for about 5 years with bears coming along and eating birdseed on the porch. But we got a nice wake-up call the other day that probably isn't a good idea now. All right. So I do want to start out talking about the ego and the ego child's mind. I want you to thoroughly understand how that's formed. You know, so often at the beginning of our journey, and maybe even in the intermediate stages, we can really beat up on ourselves. I know I did. I think most of my clients do. I think I would say everybody does. It's like we don't understand ourselves. If we don't understand ourselves, we say something is wrong with us, instead of just realizing, wait a minute, there's just something we don't understand here. Let's go figure it out. And it is in that we try to do here, that you embrace the whole self and not drive pieces of yourself away. I mean, I've had some clients that have in the past, because their learning experience was different from another, thought they were dumb. They're not dumb at all. They're just smart in a different way. And guys, when I say this, I do want you to know that we're all smart and dumb, rich and poor, generous and miserly, mean as hell and with big hearts. We're everything. And part of what we're doing here together is making your humanness all right. And why is that? Well, this is going to shock you. Your divinity is in your humanness. In other words, only by accepting yourself and your flaws and what you've done and have not done that you hold so against yourself, only by putting our arms around that and saying, yes, that's all part of me, do we have the energy of as much of the God that we are, that we can understand and can use that energy now, in the moment, differently. Because if we're pushing away, oh no, I don't want to see that part, I'm avoiding that part of my life because I'm dumb. These notions that we have, we call issues, are based on appearances. And appearances are not the truth. They are not. You see, when the little kid is learning about life, it's trying to survive until you're 7 or 8 years old. That's the main impetus that you had, trying to survive. The problem is with issues and issues based on appearances, it still makes us trying to survive even though we're adults. And this is the time that you should be creative. You should be using that energy to create with and thrive with and have great ideas that'll add value to your lives and to the world. You see, it's just the use of energy. Are you going to still try to endure and survive, or are you going to use it differently for something much more thrilling and life enhancing. And I'm going to tell you something, no matter what you think about yourself, you are what the world needs in your authenticity, not in your ego. Oh, we got plenty of that in the ego child's mind. Oh, we got plenty of that in your authenticity. And that means doing what we're doing right now, drilling down to who you really are, giving yourself permission to have done the things you've done, said the things you've said. Sins of omission and commission, they're no sins. They're just sometimes mistakes. And are they really, if you learn from them? Now, if you're holding on to that energy and beating yourself up with it, you're not learning anything. And you're not applying it to the now and the future. See, it's tricky. This is why this work is called esoteric. It's not what it seems. Nothing's what it seems. But can you do it? Absolutely. Was something left out of you and given to everybody else? Come on. Everybody has the same thing, and you're using it or not using it. And this isn't, and we've been fed a lot of erroneous information, kids. You know, the God that I certainly grew up with was a God that rewarded you for being a good little girl or boy, kind of like Santa Claus, right? And that God was there in the good times, and God knows where he went in the bad times, probably deserted us because we weren't very good and we didn't earn his being around. Guys, God, if we're going to call it that, and call it what you will, okay? Many times if I'm in business, I call it energy, but everybody that's out there that knows what I'm talking about, right? God's a nice word to me, but if it's not to you, talk about energy or anything else, but don't let one word and your bad reactions to that word put you off a phenomena that is here. And all of life, energy. And not only all of the life that you understand, but all of the life that is. If you take a pebble from the yard and put it under a microscope, there's moving molecules. Is that alive? Well, not in the sense that you mean, that I mean, but it certainly is. This is a dynamic universe. Everything is energy. Now, you learn to work with that energy, dears. You realize who you are as this energy beyond these little issues that we all have and how we beat ourselves up and how we vilify ourselves. And you'll have something. And you'll be well on the way to your potential. That's what potential is. Knowing who you are and living your life in an authentic way, remaining open to knowing more, applying that, moving through it. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Let's keep going. So I'm taking, by the way, what I'm saying and then going beyond, because I'm a chatty little thing, from this book, The Life You Want. This is a book I wrote a few years ago. It was my first book, and I still think a lot of these things, in fact, I wouldn't have written it if I didn't think it held up, period. These things are very true now. I mean, from the beginning of this book, I think I read this to you when we first started the series. The first paragraph or two says, "This is the age of individual consciousness. What you believe, the thoughts you think, and the actions you take from this moment on will determine everything." I say that is true. Second paragraph is this: "The world as we've known it is over. The business we thought would care for us, the stocks we invested in and counted on, our families are not what they once were." That's the traditional family. They are not. Everything is now being challenged and changed. Everything is changing before our eyes. No amount of yearning for the past and no laws, ordinances, shouting rhetoric, political wrangling, strategy, or religiosity. I don't know why I can't talk this morning. Not enough tea. Will revive what once was. It's just true. Now, are we going forward? Are we going to make something of this marvelous creative time where all the balls are in the air? Or not? I think the people that say or not continue to have a very hard time. Because God, in my opinion, is an infinite and ever-expanding set of truths, always in motion. There's always more to know about you, and because you, I believe, you are the aspect of God you are, there's always more to know about God. And life unfolds beautifully when you start opening the mind. All right, but first we have to address the ego child's mind, and so here we are. I love this quote. It's by Arjuna Ardagh in her book, The Translucent Revolution. It's been a while since I've read that. She said, we set up house with the ghosts of our childhood and live in a war zone of our own imagination. Now, why is that so? It's so because it's over, except for your nervous system that says, no, it's not. So we've got to challenge those things, and we have to think bigger. We have to think more globally. We have to understand who our parents were, who our tormentors were if they weren't our parents, and our sisters and brothers, and who God really is beyond what we wanted to think it was, and who we are, and who God is as us and all things. And now we're talking about the oneness with all life. So, one will never escape the ego. That's a really important part of you. The ego is charged with keeping you alive, safe, and intact. How does it do it? You know, one of the ways it does it, its most powerful way, is to give you issues. Is to give you issues, because issues explain your world. And if your world isn't explained as a little kid, and you cannot fathom the randomness of everything, most children don't survive. Do you understand? You have to have some sense of your world. Now, a child is totally myopic. All they can see is themselves. It is the higher mind, you see, that realizes the other. But the child and the ego child's mind that comes along about the same time the ego does sees nothing of that higher mind. It knows nothing beyond itself. It only sees itself, and itself relative to what's happening out there. So you have a dad that's a workaholic, and he comes home from work and shuts himself away and wants to listen to music and drink all the rest of the night, not see his kids. You do everything in your power as a child to be adorable, cute, loving, sweet. You make good grades. You try to impress, and nothing works. Then you're going to think it's you, because the mind, the ego child's mind, can't entertain any idea out of itself. Oh, it can be mad at the father. It has a lot of emotions, as you know, because they're all trapped now in our emotional bodies. But that's not true. And dynamic lives, kids, are based on the truth and not on appearances. And this is why we must get through this. This is why we must start opening this up and stop holding grudges and stop being enraged at our parents and what they did or did not do and what they gave or did not give and what they taught us or did not teach us. It's over. But it's not over. Here's the irony. We can say it's over and we can put it in a little box. It's called compartmentalization. And that's avoidance. Or we can look at all this, see how it's wired, why we feel the way we do, and be healed from this so we don't have to avoid anything anymore. It's just not that important. Why is it not that important? Because when it's healed, when you go to the bottom lines of this, the energy leaves it. Where does it go? The energy leaves then, concerning that aspect that you just healed, the emotional body, and it comes into the spiritual body, your energetic body. Now, for those of you that might not know, and those of you who are new to me, you have 4 bodies. You have a mental body. These are the bodies I work with. You have a mental body, an emotional body, a physical body, which you're pretty aware of, and an energetic body, or I also call that the spiritual body. It is energy, okay? The path to our breaking down, if you will, not that it's really a breaking down, but the path to our being imbalanced starts in the energetic body. Something goes on that we don't understand energetically. It's like, what? This may even happen in the womb, because your mother baby feeling something. I don't want to be pregnant anymore, for example, just a common one, isn't it? I'm so ready for this child to be born because I'm so uncomfortable, or anything else that the woman feels. And those are chemicals that come into the child that the child doesn't understand, because here's the kid at that point is pure, undeveloped love. Undeveloped. You will spend a lot of your life undeveloped. But you are listening to this show because something has been called in you, and you're opening yourself, and it's now that love is developing so that you can see beyond the child and what the child thought and the child's mind. You see? The child's mind develops when you're 18 months old, 18 years old, 18 months old. This is when the ego starts. This is when the ego child's mind starts. The ego starts creating this because enough bad things have happened in the past, things that hurt in the past, that we now can start creating a system whereby we don't stay in the present anymore, because until this happens at 18 months old, we're all in the present. All time is now. So you're hurt. Oh my God, it's going to last forever, we say to ourselves. And this is why sometimes things don't stick when you're going to, when you're in therapy, because they're not going back here where you formulated this is going to last forever. We've got to release the energy from that. When you say release the energy, what am I talking about? I'm talking about fixations. Everybody talks about a fixation. Nobody explains what it is. It's energy that's stuck there from the ego child's mind. They're creating energy all around that stuck point. We have to resolve it. Okay? All right. So, you're no longer in the moment anymore. So what's happening is you're running ahead now to see if there's anything out there in the future that is like the past that hurt you. So really, the future projection is just the fear of the past. Either way, it's taking you out of right now. And of course, the marvelous thing that everybody talks about is mindfulness. It is being present and conscious right now. Problem is, people can't do it. unless they're in avoidance and denying things and good at compartmentalizing, or they do work on themselves, which is what we're doing now. Because mindfulness becomes easier and easier and easier when you're no longer in the past and in the future, based on the past, but right now. I hope this is explaining it well. Thank you, darling. I'm so glad to see all of you. I'm so glad you're with us today. That just thrills me. Thank you for tuning in. I love our gathering together. Some of you I know, and some of you I don't know, but I feel like we're all friends, huh? I really do. It's wonderful. Nice little community, this, huh? So, going back to something that I did not finish earlier. So, when all of us, when we have issues, we have too much energy in the emotional body. And this energy isn't what naturally belongs in the emotional body, unless we have issues. Because the emotional body really should contain awe in this incredible system that we've got of energy. Awe, forgiveness, deep levels of love, and even unconditional love, compassion. There are a lot of things. If you want to read about more, certainly read the book. I'm also trying, darling, the reason I'm going into this book is everybody says sometimes, boy, this is a really hard book to read. And I think it is. It's interesting because when people first get this book, they go, oh my God, I don't understand a word. And then a year later, they'll go back and read it and they'll go, I understand everything. So give yourself a break, okay? It is written to challenge your ego child's mind. That's part of the healing, isn't it? So it's a very powerful book. But I think that I can help your understanding of it as we talk through some of these things, okay? So when you have too much energy in the emotional body, when you have formed these ideas based on appearances about yourself, your world, your mom, your dad, family in general, brothers and sisters, other people, God, animals, nature, who knows, everything, huh? Based on appearances. At some point that must be challenged because there's too much energy there. And rage at your father for ignoring you or not valuing your talents is just something that should not be there except in the ego state. The thing that I love too about this, I'm coming back to this subject, but if you drew a great big circle, acknowledging that really there is no circle at all, but just for our understanding, draw a great big circle and take your pen or pencil and put a tiny dot in it. Guys, that tiny dot is the ego child's mind. And sometimes it drives the bus. And you shouldn't, because you're so much more than that. So it's important that we address what the limitations are that you believe there. And let them change, because when we address them, and we have to get to the bottom line. You see, this is not just a therapy. I just sat on my dog. This is not just a kind of therapy that I do that puts a Band-Aid over something. It really doesn't disappear until we get to the bottom line of something. What are the bottom lines that are all working together as a nice little tight-knit group to keep you believing and performing, because you perform out of your beliefs, the way you are, that are limiting you, right? I love that image, that little dot. Address that little dot and play in the fields of your excellence instead, right? Of your potential another word. Okay, so going back to what I was just saying. So where does the energy go as we are releasing all of this stuff in the ego child's mind? What happens? Well, the interesting thing is when we release that narrow little idea of ourselves and our world, and we can put it in the larger and more global framework of what really is. For example, that silly little example I gave you earlier about the dad. Well, my dad was an alcoholic and a workaholic. He was just barely holding it together. He didn't have enough energy for the rest of his family. Then we have to move beyond the shoulds. Well, he should have. Yeah, that was his life path. What's yours? If you hold on to that and are judging his, you're judging your own. And the thing is, and you're using that to perhaps not move on for yourself. You're all tied up in that. And that's a lovely place for all of us to hide, isn't it? It's not about us. We have a reason for being like we are. Oh, please. Nobody has a reason. Not really. Are you this energy of God or not? If so, go on. Address what's broken. Of course. Resolve it. Accept the way your life was. Accept it all. And then become something that you really are. Because you're much more than that. All of it has already been given to you. So this energy of trying to get straight with our ego child's mind and what we really believe, by the way, it's very complicated down there. Because we'll hold on to things, and you're going to hear me lecture about this in just a minute. We're very tricky, okay? We tell ourselves certain things so it'll stay in place, all right? And to further complicate things, we make bad things good and good things bad, all right? Say we become the same workaholics that our fathers were, all right? And we drink too much. And we do not see any of our community. And we work, which we resent, and we come home and we stay in our beds and watch television or play games and drink and smoke and say we're justified and do it all again the next day. And we wonder why we're depressed, and we wonder why we're lonely. And we wonder why we have anxiety, because what anxiety is doing in that case is saying you're off the track. Anxiety often does that. It says you're off the track physically. You haven't had enough water to make all the things in your body function well. You're off the track emotionally, going in the wrong direction. All the things you're doing right now are leading to you being the closed system. Closed system doesn't have a lot happening to it. It doesn't interact within its environment very much, or minimally, it will. And it's calling you to the open system, which is the higher aspects of God, right? Where things are, it's a cooperative universe. You fundamentally know that. And anxiety is often there to be a wake-up call. It's a signpost that says, I'm feeling anxious. Look deeper. See where you're off the beam. Let's correct those things. See. Okay. So when you are healing these things, addressing these things, going to the base, finding out, why you believe what you do, and you can have genetic components of this, you can have inherited components of this, you can have ideas that came to you in your schooling and your mother and father, and it can come a million different ways. The fact is, we've got to find out what you believe. Helps to know if you inherited it. certainly. And I have a lot of clients that come to me and say, there are just some things I don't remember. But let me tell you, I want to put your mind at ease. You remember what you're supposed to. That's all. That's all I need. Your intention and that's all we need. Okay? And your emotional honesty, which is going to wake up further as we go. I love working with my clients that I've had for many years, particularly because they call me and say, okay, here are the things that happened this week. This is what they all mean. And all I have to do is do my little moving the energy thing, because they've linked it in many cases themselves. That's a big deal, because we've got to wake up to who we are, to how we are doing it, our trickiness, our manipulations of ourselves and then of others. When we do this, getting back to the point, what happens when we hit those bottom lines and we have looked at all the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual components of this and started kind of breaking those energetic threads, and sometimes they're big old ropes, right? When we do that, what happens is the energy naturally transfers to the spiritual body. We wake up to energy. We wake up to the fact that's all we are, that what we're doing is creating with energy, that energy is what it's all about, not this substance, because everything starts in energy before it even becomes substance. If you can put your mind around that, if you can understand that, if you can move into that, then you don't get all whacked out when something isn't substance yet. You know, it's all moving behind the scenes. It's all energy. And you are forever grateful. It's moving for your good, because everything does work for your good. What doesn't work for your good? When you stop the energy, when you say, I want something, or I want to, heal this, and then something hurts, and we close down and we say, see, evidence, this doesn't work. Evidence of my issues and what I am telling myself. Evidence that I'll never get ahead. Evidence that, really? It was just one little blip. It was that, on the way to something bigger. But we'll say then, it doesn't work, because there's the evidence. And we shut down energetically, just like the ego child's mind did when we were young. And we can't see anything else. We've stopped the spin out to whatever else it's going to be. Now, what happens to you guys as you release these things that the emotional child believes, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, by the way? Because what you can do spiritually is mix energy with a parent, live your parent's life. You can see this sometimes, because at 40 years old, both of you divorce. There'll be a similarity. Those things have got, are you just a mix of them? No, you've got to separate that. You are your own person. Here's the thing. The ego child's mind doesn't want that kind of responsibility. They're terrified they'll make a mistake. They're terrified they'll ruin their lives. They're terrified of something like that. Guys, but the only way you're going to be happy is taking that kind of responsibility and knowing that you're strong enough to get through it. You're smart enough. If you don't know things, and there are a lot of things, guys, I don't know. There really are. You're seeing what I'm good at. By gosh, if something's wrong with my computer, I don't know how to fix it. I'm good at typing. But my darling husband does, and if it's beyond him, we've got other people that will come. Why panic about anything? You know how to fix things. One of the exercises that I always make my advanced classes do is to write down 5 of the most horrendous things you can think of that could happen to you. Think of them. You can do this exercise too. Think of 5 horrendous things. And now give me 5 or 10 points beyond that of what you would do with it. Oh, beyond the emotionality. Don't write down, I'll panic. No, Who are you going to call? What are you going to do? And when people do this exercise in the advanced classes, I'll say, what'd you learn from that? And they said, there's nothing to worry about. We know what to do. It's the child's mind that just automatically says, you don't know what to do. So are you going to be beyond it, or are you going to work with it and challenge it? And here's the thing. The time to challenge it is now, before these things happen, because they sure will get the hell in the way if you don't. And this is how you have grace under fire. Figure it out beforehand. Be willing to change. People come and go in our lives, So be willing to see what else you're going to do. Review this list every couple of years. What happens eventually when you get beyond these limiting ego child's mind beliefs is this. The energy goes into the spiritual body and you wake up. You wake up. I'm not talking about this woke movement that's now. Guys, that's so much ego. Do you understand? It's just a different word. Stop. The awakened state is peaceful. It's embracing of all parts of you, even the little part of you that's anxious at 3 o'clock in the morning. You then say, if you're waking up to what we're talking about, to deeper levels of consciousness, you don't just go, ooh, and go clean your refrigerator to forget about it. You say, what is this coming from? Where am I off the beam here? What am I supposed to challenge in myself now? How am I going to live tomorrow a little differently and beyond this? It's a beautiful process. So the energy goes into the spiritual body, and that's how we wake up into deeper consciousness. Isn't that amazing? That's how we become aware, wait a minute, everything is energy and I'm energy. And I create this experience. I create it in the moment, in the literal moment. Each moment, kids, is sacred. It will never come again the same way. You think, in addition, and I've got the experience written in this book, and I'm not going to quote all of it because, quite frankly, I don't remember it, but we've got to understand that the inner is more powerful than the outer. We spend most of our lives trying to find the fix out there. No, the answers are right here. Become more of who you are as this energetic, spiritual being in physical form. This opens the channel to who you really are as God, as the aspect of God you are. This is the way to surf on that cutting wave that is coming into shore of change. It's an amazing experience. But you're not going to get there by avoiding things, because this is at a totally awake experience. You're catching nuances that other people don't see. I've said all along, and I think I said in this book, enlightenment is not what everybody is experiencing on the day-to-day basis. It's what most people miss, because it's there. But if we're in the ego child's mind, we are not playing in that field. We're doing something else instead. Okay. One of the things I want you to realize is that the ego system, the ego child's mind, does not know what happened in your childhood from now. To the ego child system, it's all the same, and it causes you to react. When you have a stimulus from your childhood, you react the exact same way you did. You're reacting as the child instead of the informed and developed adult. And this is extremely important for you to realize. That your ego child's mind is a part of you that doesn't, that little dot we had you put on the page, doesn't know about the larger arena. The larger arena knows about the dot because it's contained within the larger arena. You understand? And this is why you get up to a point in the ego child's mind and you go, I've got to go. Even if this seems crazy, I've got to go. I'm reminded, and I think I've put this in the book as well, of that wonderful movie, Phenomenon. Oh, no, not Phenomenon. What was it called? Shoeless Joe. What is it? Field of Dreams. There we go. That had a lovely thing in it that James Earl Jones did. James Earl Jones said, I don't know what's in that cornfield, but I got to go find out. And there was such a peace, wasn't there, that he portrayed. And that's honestly the truth. You got to go find out. You got to go on this esoteric journey. And other people may not be joining you. Does that mean that you've got to drop them away? Sometimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes what you find after going on this and getting rid of all the anger and the rage and the, oh, I believe in unfairness and all that crapola, which is always the issue, by the way. Life is unfair. So are you going to create something wonderful or are you not? I mean, it's totally off the beam when we're trying to make life fair. It's part of your control as an ego, right? Ego child's mind. Are you going to go into that cornfield and see what's there for you or not? Hi, Kelly. And hello, Sheila. Sheila says, I'm over here taking notes. Oh, darling, thank you. That's wonderful. I'm delighted when you all take notes. You know, part of the way I'm healing on the radio is I give you too much information that challenges your ego child's mind in many cases. And when I do, a kind of a chaos is created in the cells. And what happens in chaos? At some point you go to new order. And the new order is a different way of thinking. So it's the way I can help heal you in this format, you see. So I throw a lot at you. It's a wonderful thing that you all write these things down. I've always been a big note taker. I know some of you aren't, and you all have better brains than I do. But let me tell you, I have to take notes. I've always been like that. I have copious notes. I always have lots of little Post-it notes around me, if that gives you anything. And I think my life, I've laughed for years, my life goes according to what Post-it notes I find. There I go. But, you know, I do feel like they're put in my path for a reason. Okay. You keep in mind that the ego child's mind and the issues in the emotional body comprise most of the energy of the emotional body until they don't. If you're going to use the emotional body the way it's intended for these marvelous things to take root, I often think, and I've said this before, but I often think it's like a garden, you know? So let's say you have a little square garden in the back of your house. If you just let it do its own thing, it's going to be overgrown, and the things you want to have grow there, maybe vegetables, flowers, whatever gives you pleasure, is going to be, the nutrients are going to be taken away from it, aren't they? Yeah. So you don't do that. You go out and you weed, and you plant what you want, and you weed, and you keep it so that the nutrients are going into the flowers and vegetables and things you want. This is what happens in the emotional body too, right? The things there like compassion and unconditional love and forgiveness and many, many other things. There are about 8 things. Deepen and really, have great nutrients and flourish there. When you weed these things out of the garden. Are they bad? No. They're just energy, guys. These issues are appearances. They're puffs of air. They have served you to make sense of your world. You lived and you made sense, but are they true? See, nobody ever gets around to asking themselves that, except, I'm preaching to the choir, except you guys that listen to a show like this. Why do I have this? Is it serving me now? If it's not serving me now, what's beyond this? Let's just go. Let's find out. Because here's the thing. I can tell you, oh, well, this is probably beyond that. I can tell you generally what this higher self is, and I can point it out when you're not doing it in our private sessions and that kind of thing, and I can steer you in that right direction, and I can take things away. But you're the one ultimately that's going to wake up and go, no, I'm not going to go there. This is what I choose instead. And it's a choice now, isn't it? Not a reaction. They're completely different things. A choice is conscious. A reaction is not, in many cases. You see? So it's got to wake you up to say, okay, I'm getting it. I understand. I'm having a reaction here. I know where it came from. Is it still valid in my life to react that way? Your answer may be yes. If so, we keep working. One of these days you're going to say, no, I'm going to choose a different way. And sometimes it's not even that hard. Sometimes you just automatically live a different way. Isn't that nice? I remember a story. Perhaps I better stop here because I'm throwing a lot at you. Not stop the show, but stop to tell you a story. So years ago, when I was working on myself, one of the things I worked on was my darling grandmother. My grandmother was a very nice person. She really was. I don't mean to imply she wasn't, but boy, was she tough. She was a powerhouse. She was a tough woman. And she had certain ideas of the way I should behave, and I was kind of a little wild child. And so I worked on coming out of that energy of being dominated by an old lady, right? And so I went to a friend's anniversary party. He was giving it for his mother and father who'd been married for 50 years. Very sweet. Country club. Beautiful. It was great. And at this country club, this was long before COVID, of course. This was like 30 or 40 years ago. 30 or 40 years ago. There were these big round tables we all sat at. And I don't know why this woman, but was sitting across from me. It was an old lady. And she, no hello, no nothing, said, and I think we did introduce our names. She said, "And Martha, where do you go to church? Are you a Christian? Are you," questions like that. I was really puzzled by this. And so I tried to be honest, I think I'm kind of all denominational, and I don't really go to one church, but I enjoy all of them, and I don't tend to go on Sunday mornings. This is before I gave a radio show, because it was the only time my first husband and I had together, because we really had busy weeks, right? And oh man, she didn't like my answer, and she huffed up, and she said, "Well," very judgmentally, it was very cute, "I've been going to Sunday school for 75 years, and I've never missed a Sunday. What do you think about that?" And it was very, I was obviously the center at the table. It was real cute, because all of a sudden I said, "Well, I think I work a hell of a lot harder than you do." It just kind of popped out of my mouth. And I didn't say it mean. I was just, I work harder than you. I work a hell of a lot harder, I think I said, than you do. And I need my Sunday mornings. It was unbelievable. It was like an atom bomb went off at that table. And right then, the servers put cake in front of all of us. And ordinarily, I would have felt terrible if I had spoken up. But I had this feeling that I should turn around and see who said that. And it was me. I was absolutely delighted. And I just dived into my cake. It was the funniest thing in the world. I had a completely different reaction than I would have ever had before. I didn't have anything to forgive myself for. I was just saying truth, and I wasn't criticizing her. But I was stopping her criticizing me. And that was the end of it. I think Spirit put that in my path to show me a completely different reaction, and that what I had been doing really was effective. And so I thought that was a little funny story to share. That's what happens. You kind of sometimes hear something come out of your mouth and you're thinking, who said that? Oh, 'twas I. All right, kids, let's keep going. I want to move along to say, and I guess this is just in what do I want to say, in summary of what we've talked about so far, that consciously and subconsciously, the ego child's mind drives us to experience life as a child and gives us the same reactions we always had. It keeps us limited because it doesn't care, honey, if you're happy. It just cares that you're alive. That's the survival mode that it's in, right? It doesn't care if you're happy. You care now because Spirit is calling you to something beyond the ego child's mind. And happiness, certainly, and fulfillment lies there. So here's how the ego child's mind works. It does 3 very important things to keep the untenable in place. In other words, it's its own operating system, and it must perpetuate its system for it to work. You see, you can't just have the ego child's mind there without perpetuating its own system. You understand? We perpetuate the perpetuation. All right. So the ego child's mind does 4 very important things to keep everything going. You ready? Number 1, it normalizes the unthinkable. It normalizes it. What do I mean by that? Okay. If you are undeveloped love, as the ego child's mind, which we all are, you're loved. You expect to be loved. You expect to love. That's about all we come in with. All right? And that's not what your childhood is. Your childhood is a lot of yelling and screaming, a mother or a father that appears to be a force, and you're such a tiny little thing, you're no force. There are things that scare you. There are things that make you think I'll never eat again if your meal is missed. There are things, small and large, that affect us this way. You may grow up with somebody that hits you. Your father may be a rageaholic and haul off and hit you, and your mother slaps you. I know someone whose mother threw her down the stairs in a rage. So what happens, so you can keep going, is for them the child's mind goes, this is normal. Whatever happened in your childhood, you need to, at some point when you're waking up and trying to open consciousness, you need to ask, is this in the range of normal? Is there normal? No. Is there a range of normal? Yes. Is this in the range of normal? And that's a very important question to ask. Because some people, I remember years ago, I was working with a client and pointed out that they shouldn't have been beaten on a regular basis. And they said, well, that's normal, isn't it? Doesn't it go on in everybody's home? No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. It's not normal to be called a bitch. It's not normal to be treated that way. No, it's not normal. It's not in the range of normal. Okay. So, one of the things the ego child's mind does is it normalizes what it cannot understand. As a child, darling, we don't even have a developed brain until we're in our 20s. Somewhere in our 20s, the brain starts developing all the way. There's no way a child can understand this. So it develops these egoic systems and these issues so it can survive and make sense of their world. This is normal, it says. When it is not normal at all. So I urge you to look at what's in the range of normal and what's in the range of not normal. You understand? Real important for you. Number 2. The ego child's mind, to continue the perpetuation of itself, exaggerates fears. You know, it's really interesting to me how people come in that have had some sort of spiritual work and have done a little reading, however cursory on the surface and on the surface it has been, and they'll say, oh, I've heard that my fear is going to introduce this into my life, and I'm terrified about that. For example, oh, I'm afraid of serial killers, and I'm afraid I'm generating one into my life, right? No, sweetie, you've got to understand, in most cases, the fear is enough. The fear is enough to keep you limited. You don't have to create anything on the other side of that. Some people do, some people don't. It has to do with what your life path is that you're choosing, right? Sometimes just the fear is enough. The fear of failure keeps you from doing anything. Have you actually failed? Maybe sometimes not. Is it really failure if you learn something and apply something? No, of course it's not. It just makes you stronger. I hope you're realizing that as we're talking about this, that some of these things are just blooming puffs of air. They're blooming puffs of air. They're things that you believed to limit yourself because that seemed like a good idea to the ego child's mind. You're charged with knowing more now. You're charged with taking that survival emphasis, and opening that up so that you can create with it. This is a time for creation. The world is changing. If you come there with a great idea, you may be a step away from all the money you've ever wanted. Guys, this is the time for listening to God. This is the time, as this book says, for individual consciousness. I'm going to go back to that and say, what you believe, the thoughts you think, and the actions you take from this moment on will determine everything. That's absolutely true. But it has to be from a higher self-mind and not the same egocentric mind that we've always been living. That's the world right now, isn't it? Oh my God. You listen to the news and you go, what are people thinking? People are buying off people. Nobody's telling the truth. Nobody's telling the truth, kids. But you'll know the truth. You won't be the victim of all this if you are in that channel and listening. Now, do I have the world figured out? Not by a long shot. Whenever I hear something that upsets me, say on the news, it happens once in a while, I'll meditate on that and I get the same answer every time. And that is, my guides say, do your job. Just do your job. Write, do the radio show, work with individuals who want this, want their higher selves and to have that as a life experience. Do your job. That's good enough for me. I'm not going to get involved with everything else. I've got to do my job. This is what we do. There'll be an answer for you too. May not be the same one. The third point here, what the ego child's mind does, is it makes sweeping generalizations. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's say you have a dad who is completely out of control and is a rageaholic. The generalization could be, all men are rageaholics. All men aren't to be trusted. All men will hurt me. Guys, this is not a sexist thing. I've heard things like that from men for years about women. If you had a tough mom, I had a marvelous client 2 or 3 years ago who came in and said, I like my wife to be out of control because then I get to hate her like I did my mother when she's out of control. That was a huge revelation, wasn't it? That was a real start of some healing, how he just needed somebody in his house to hate because he was perpetuating this mother thing instead of healing. I'm happy to say he and his wife are doing just great and well beyond that, both of them. It makes sweeping generalizations. The rich are like this, the poor are like this, men are like this, women are like this. Can be anything. A different color of race is like this. Anybody who disagrees with me because I don't know how to handle disagreement, an individual might say, is really scary. I'm going to be biased against them. I think it's really important for all of us to invest in our similarities. Certainly we have our differences, and I think that's really important. I think we marry people and we have to love them enough to support our differences and to celebrate our differences in many cases. We can be aggravated by the differences, or we can say, that's them, this is me. Let's just come to an equitable solution here. No big deal. Is love more important? Yes. Is love a privilege? Yes. But many people forget that, right? They do. We must not generalize. We must not see everyone as an extension of us. That's another generalization. Nope. So generalization is what the child's mind does to understand a very scary world until they wake up to the fact of, look, my dad was this way, but that does not mean my husband's this way. Another generalization I often see is, well, I've always lost, so I'm going to lose now. All love goes down the toilet, so it's going to happen now. That's another generalization. You see, what happened in the past is going to happen now. That's, no. No, you just need to do some energetic work. That's all that's going on here. And separate those ideas out and see everybody as the individual they are. How you're going to really love somebody if you're imposing something on someone. And guys, one of the impositions that you can do is romanticizing them. Let's say it that way. Romanticizing them is not the same thing as being romantic. Romanticizing is when you put a rosy glow over somebody and you refuse to see who they really are. Is that kind? Is that somebody that, would you want that done to you? Not seeing who you really are, not loving you as who you really are. No, loving the idea of what they want you to be, or you. Loving someone for the idea you want them to be. We can idealize them. We can romanticize them and not see reality. And many times, this is an ideal from the past. I mean, there was a woman that I know whose father gave her everything. Gave her everything. Said, I'll always be there for you, babe. Always. Well, she expects that out of every husband she's ever had. And was the father there for her? No. The father did some rather mean things to her. But she never woke up. Oh, no. He's always taking care of me. This is her fantasy, right? And now, nobody takes care of her. Her husband, she's criticizing all the time because he's not the idealized father. But the idealized father wasn't real either, darlings. We've got to wake up. It's another kind of generalization. And number 4, the ego child's mind elevates the importance of what you're doing to godly proportions. Write that down. The ego child's mind elevates the importance of what you're doing to godly proportions. For example, let's say you have a mentally ill mother. The mentally ill mother manipulates you to totally be her nurse, to totally be her confidant. A child should not be a parent's confidant, by the way. Not ever. But this is what she does to you. There's a brainwashing here going on. When you don't do that, she freezes you out. So you learn to sacrifice yourself to her, to subdue yourself, that nobody cares about your feelings. The mother is the only one that matters. Now, something like that could be so rage-producing. Granted, you can go that direction in your adulthood. But what you can also do is to say, I have to keep sacrificing. I have to be like my mother because, God wants me to. God wants me to support my mother this way. God tells me to honor my mother and father. This is what the child thinks. Do you think God wants you to be abused? I don't think so. And we've got to wake up to the fact that we are, if we are. So those are the 4 ways that we stay in our crap. Okay? Those are the 4 ways we do it. I want to put on the table this, and I've only got 14 minutes. You know, when I start talking, time gets away, doesn't it? When we are beginning our journey and when we're in our intermediate journey, we often say, damn that ego, damn this issue. I'll point something out about how somebody is wired on a more subtle level after listening to an hour of their conversation. I'll say, here's what I think you're doing. And they'll go, oh my God, yes. You know, I would never put that together mentally, but yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. But many times their reaction is then, damn it, listen to me. Listen to what I'm doing. I hate that part of me. Do you think for a moment that you should hate anything about you? How about the compassion of realizing it and the brilliance of realizing what the ego child's mind's doing? It's just trying to keep you alive, safe, intact, by making sense of your world. So you go right to beating yourself up. Well, is that the higher self or is that the ego child's mind? You bet it's the ego child's mind. It also might imply that you have a fantasy going on. So you don't like to hear anything bad about yourself. And those things are crazy. You've got to stop the fantasy of who you are and just be who you are. This fantasy that you're elevated or this fantasy that you're the bottom of a dirty birdcage, both of them are fantasies. We're not king and queens of the world, nor are we the bottom of the dirty birdcage. We're not either. We're just who we are as a channel for the ascended God we are. Everything else is an illusion. Everything else is an issue. Everything else is a manipulation. Everything else is a game. Everything else is a deception of self. So let's wake up. That damn ego. It's the cause of all my troubles. Guys, there is not one thing that's good or bad in this energy of God. It just is, and it has to be accepted by the self as what you did or did not do. You have to learn to forgive it on the deepest level. Oh, listen, and don't be trapped in forgiveness. We all say, oh, we forgive them. When we don't. Oh, I forgive myself. When we don't. It's because unforgiveness is so awful and feels so bad within us that we would rather compartmentalize it in a nice little box and put it over there and avoid it than open it up and get through it. Consciousness, then, is about getting through it. It's not about bypassing anything. You remember, the road to deeper levels of consciousness and enlightenment is awareness, consciousness, and enlightenment. That's the trip you're on. You understand? That's the road that you're on. So this is not about avoiding anything, compartmentalizing, putting it in the box in the top of your closet. No, this is about, come on, let's look at it. You got me. I'm sure you've got other people around you too. And if you don't, you got me to help you get through something like this. You're not alone. And this is the journey that everybody has taken. Since time immemorial, this is the journey to enlightenment. Let's do it. You remember, and I'll leave you with this because we have 10 more minutes before I take you into a whole new subject about all this. You remember that marvelous construct, if you will, simple one, that I told you, it's called the threshold exercise. The threshold exercise. It's one of the things that I teach in my classes. So you draw a horizontal line across the page. You draw a vertical line through that horizontal line with the acknowledgement that you're going to have an infinite number of vertical lines. Put at the bottom of the vertical line, let's say, I'm just going to make something up, selfishness. It's the acknowledgement right now that you are selfish, and so am I, and that everybody in the world, in the ego, child's mind, straight energies, that's everything under the line, is selfish. Yep, we are. So what? Because the more you release in the emotional body, the more work you do on yourself, you go up that vertical line. And at some point, you actually cross that horizontal line and you keep going up. And if you go up high enough, you know what the energy of selfishness turns into? It turns into always doing whatever the right thing is, the right thing to do. So, vilifying yourself in the ego child's mind is ridiculous, because you need the ego child's mind for it to turn into something else. All the energies translate into something else when you are in the highest self mind. And these are arenas. This isn't, that line, that horizontal line isn't just something I've got to punt you over. No, it is not. It is a gradual, organic process of raising your vibration by deepening your understanding of who you are and how you've been wired energetically, egoically, and releasing it all. And then you become something else. It doesn't translate into the same thing anymore. You see? And I'm going to say that all of us must learn to accept ourselves. We must accept what we've done and what we have not done. Great sadness comes from our non-acceptance of these things. And you remember that it is the natural process to accept these things, because our divinity is in our humanness. So if you're denying your humanness, oh, I don't want to admit I'm weak, I don't want to admit this, I don't want to admit that, oh, I'm so ashamed of this and that I've done. If we don't learn to forgive ourselves and accept those things, those energies we are denying, how are you ever going to be in the arena of the ascended God you are in your authenticity? Oh, my dears, I wish that for you. It's a process. It's not a light switch one turns on. And as the Chinese say in that marvelous adage, they say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. I think we all can get to work. Enjoy. Even in our suffering. Enjoy. Because it's a privilege that God has given you from the very start of your life that you're waking up to now. Guys, thank you so much for all of this. This is not a fantasy. Many times people use it as that because they don't want to go on this journey. I appreciate that you all want to go. Thank you. It's the whole reason I'm close to you and I do a show like this and I say, let's do it. Okay? So, guys, have a happy Thanksgiving. That's next. Now, a lot of people are going to be listening to the show at another time, so happy whatever you are listening to the show. But for those of you that are live right now with me, thank you so much for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll continue this because what an important subject this is, isn't it? I think so too. It's the base of everything, you know? And we've got to get beyond, needing to earn God's love. You are God's love. You don't need to earn anything. You need to open to it. That's really the key here, isn't it? You've got to open to it past your misconceptions of self and all. That's what's going on. Dear God, thank you so much for the blessing of these dear, dear people and their journeys and their hopes and their fears and their lovingness. Thank you for their good hearts. Thank you for having them every moment. God has you, dear hearts. Know that. We ask that their minds become open past the ego child's mind, that they see clearly from the highest self what they're doing, that they have a willingness to do that they want to see, and they want to heal, and they want to get through this, and you tell them how. Beyond the vilification for self. Let's ask them to give up as much of that as possible right now. And the acceptance of self takes its place. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this. We say now, we appreciate it, and we say this prayer in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of everyone listening to the show. Thank you so much. And so it is. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for being a part of this. You can really help me a lot by getting the show around. If there's a way, I think on Blog Talk Radio, you can actually send this to your social media accounts. But through social media, word of mouth, if you like these shows or any of them, and we have, oh God, I don't know how many shows on a variety of subjects, please do get them around to your network. We're hoping to expand the conscious community, certainly. And that is a way to really help it. We thank you so much for all of this. I hope you all have the happiest Thanksgiving. Guys, isn't this the most wonderful holiday? You know, wouldn't it be great if every single day we have the holiday of Thanksgiving in our hearts and minds? Oh, it's glorious. I wish for you that. And much, much more. Okay, kids. God bless you. I'll see you in 2 weeks. You remember that God loves you through you, so you treat yourself more kindly. Please. Not so reactively. Okay? All right. Take care of yourself now. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.